Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Credit Room podcast for what will be episode number 103. But before we get into what this episode is going to be about, I first just want to thank you all for listening to the episode about my father. That was 2 episodes ago. I know I thanked you guys last week, but once again, that episode just means a lot to me. If you haven't had the chance to listen to it, it is titled Soldier On. Once again, it is just a tribute to my father who passed away on the 21st of last month. And if you haven't had the chance to listen yet, please do. An incredible man, an incredible legacy that I just touched upon. So if you have the time and you haven't listened yet, please do. That would mean a lot to me. And for those of you who have, thank you guys for your comments. I've read them all. They all matter to me. Thank you guys so much. Last week's episode, also, I am really trying to get this message out about what is going down in Los Angeles within the homeless community. Dr. Drew and a lot of doctors in LA are trying to get this message through to the mainstream. And for some reason, the mainstream media is not supporting Dr. Drew and these doctors in getting this message out about the potential, very real and very scary potential outbreak of Yersinia, or the plague, the bubonic plague, believe it or not. If that sounds mind-blowing to you, it should. It is mind-blowing to me. It is mind-blowing to Dr. Drew and countless doctors throughout LA, to the CDC as well. And there is not a plan. There is not a plan as of now that will work to combat this. And the rat population of LA is 12 times the size that it's ever been. So if you haven't yet listened to episode number 102, it'll blow your mind, and please spread the word. Having said that, episode number 103, I want to start with a story. After my freshman year in college, a lot of my friends in the summertime would go home, and they would stay, at home with their families. And a lot of times it was just about saving money in between, the summer months that would separate, the first and last semesters of college. I actually stayed in Iowa State University, in which I got a part-time job at the Iowa State Daily as a string writer for the Iowa State Daily newspaper, and also for the Ames Daily Tribune. And also I was trying to do part-time work for the Des Moines Register, in which I would write articles and submit them, and if they liked them, they would buy them per word. But I also hung siding, aluminum siding, and I also delivered pizzas part-time and delivered sub sandwiches part-time. So technically speaking, you could say that I had 6 part-time jobs at one time. But truth be told, the writing gigs were kind of one job, even though they were separated. I reported to the Iowa State Daily only twice a week, 2 days during the week, and then 1 day during the week for the Ames Daily Tribune, and then the rest of the writing was freelance. Which meant that I worked mornings, 4 hours in the morning every day of the week, at least Monday through Friday, hanging siding. And then in the evening, from 4 p.m. until 8, possibly sometimes until midnight, if drivers came up sick or didn't show up, I would deliver pizzas and subs. And if that sounds terrible, it was. It was not fun. It was just a lot of work and not a lot of free time, but there was something that I did gain from it, something that I knew I had to have, and that was freedom. And what I mean by freedom is, when I finally got away from my situation and went to college, that felt like someone let me out of jail. And I was able to leave Persia, Iowa, and this nightmare situation at home, and, go to Iowa State and go to college, in which I will never forget the first day of college when it hit me that I can do anything that I wanted. When it hit me that I was in control of my future. Uh, I had a tough situation. I was controlled, in almost every aspect of my life. You know, right down to being 18 years old and still having, a fucking 10 p.m. curfew that would be met with the iron fist if I was 1 minute late. And I'm not kidding about this. Plus all the haunting stuff, and it was just a miserable situation. So why did I work that many jobs? Truth be told, I wanted to find a full-time job, but there was just nothing full-time that was I could find quick enough once school ended. But the main point was this: if I go home, then I am, essentially financially being taken care of by my parents. I'm living there. I'm eating their food. If I'm not working a job, if I needed money at the time, I'd have to borrow it from them. And what I learned at a very early age is that when someone gives you money, it's an invitation into your life, into, your relationships, your schedule, all of those things. And I knew that if I took money from my parents, then they could have a say. They would want to know where I was at, where I was going, what I was doing, what my schedule was, that type of thing. And I just was not willing to give that up. With money comes the invitation into someone into your life. But if I could find a way to control my own financial future, even if it meant working 6 part-time jobs, so I could have 2 hours a day where I could do whatever I wanted, it was worth it to me because I controlled my life at that point. Now, the reason that was so important to me at that time, I was establishing who I was. I was trying to find out, if given freedom, what will I do? Who am I? What do I enjoy? Now, of course, there's times in life where obviously you want to build things and you want partnerships and you want, people to be involved in your life, and specifically in business, you want to be, you want to be in relationships with the right people, and, in the film business, you definitely want to have financial partners, and you definitely want to have people who are technical partners and people, who are creative partners. And that's different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, your basic fundamental life, living, right? You don't want to just take money from somebody to just live, because if they're just giving you money to just live, then they're going to have a say in your life as to how you live. And that's the kind of money you don't want. And that's what I was working for. With those 6 jobs that I had, I was working to make sure that I could establish who I was. And if nobody was giving me money to live on a daily basis, then like I said, no one could tell me how to live. Nobody could ask me where I was going, what I was spending my money on, who I was seeing, how I was spending my time, how much I partied. Like, it didn't matter. My life was under my control. Now, I bring this up for a specific reason. With this coronavirus stuff going on, there's been a lot of talk as to what exactly is happening. And with the economy tanking, and with so many people hurting right now, there's been a lot of debt created. People are suffering. Months have gone by in which people have not been allowed to work. And there's still, 30 million Americans that don't even have their first stimulus check or the $1,200 check. And now there's all kinds of talks going on that, there's going to be more stimulus money coming. And there could be, as much as $2,000, for 6 months guaranteed or for a year guaranteed. And there's multiple scenarios. Some say it'll be one payment of $1,200, but it's going to be, monthly money given to you on top of your check if you're, an essential worker. And there's other things that say, unemployment's going to be increased or extended. There's all kinds of ways in which the government is now, discussing giving the public money. Now, the conspiratorial-minded, they have been, pointing out for multiple reasons since this all began, that this is the New World Order in effect right now. That there is a plan to try to bring the world together as a one world nation. And this is the first plan, meaning give the world a nameless, faceless enemy like coronavirus, have everybody suffer, and then see if mankind can come together to try and defeat the coronavirus. And to be honest, look, there's a lot of reasons why people would think that. At the same time, and I've definitely been a person that's been looking out for this and have been discussing this, is the potential of down the road of a fake alien invasion coming for the same purpose, to bring everybody together. And we've seen all kinds of bizarre stuff happen with UFOs and the extraterrestrial presence. Since this all began, the CIA has been tweeting about the top 10 cases for people to study. Tom DeLonge has flat out called for a one world nation. Out of the blue, for the third time, in the middle of all this, the Department of Defense decided to confirm once again that the 3 videos that were released by DeLonge's To the Stars company were in fact legitimate. There's more and more talk about the Space Force. It's been headline news everywhere. There's been countless sightings that are new, and a lot of people believe that this is coming. The fake alien invasion is coming, and the coronavirus is a mere test to see how far humanity will go. Will human beings actually place themselves on house arrest if you tell them to? Will we stay in our house and not meet with our friends or family if we're told to? Will we put a mask on 24/7? Will we stay home and not work if we're told to? Will we shut down our businesses? Will we accept being told that we will be fined for breathing fresh air? That if we go outside without a mask, we can face up to a $1,000 fine? Will we accept being told that we can no longer sit down at the beach? We can jog, we can skateboard, but if we sit down at the beach and remove our mask, will we accept a $1,000 fine? There's a lot of things going on that we've discussed that are really, really bizarre. Now, there's a point I'm getting to in all this. If you talk to any of those conspiratorial-minded individuals that believe that we are, in fact, headed towards this one world government, this one society under one leader. And a lot of people will believe it's going to be a situation where it's kind of like the United Nations now governs planet Earth. And we would all have to accept who that one leader would be, in which our unique individual constitutions would be torn up, and we would all now live under one set of rules, basically. Now, if this were to happen, those who are big into these one world nation, new world order conspiracy theories, one of the things they all fear, and there's a reason for it that makes sense, is they fear universal basic income. And what I mean by that is the government basically, covering basic bills, a set amount of money that goes to families, or individuals every month to cover the basic living, costs, rent, food, things like that. And the idea being that if the government is, paying those things for you, once you become accustomed to it, you ain't going to want to let it go. In fact, under that scenario, the government would have a lot of control. And a lot of things that the government would want to do, you would go along with it if the threat was, we'll take away your money. Not saying you specifically, any one individual out there who's listening right now going, fuck you, Chad, I wouldn't do that. I'm just saying in general, and this isn't a knock because it makes sense. If everybody is now accepting money from the government to cover basic living expenses, there's going to be a massive percentage of the population that doesn't want that money to stop. And that's the fear in government controlling, a big portion of your life. Something like your living expenses is whatever they want to do. It would become very hard to go against the government that is paying your bills. So, people who believe that we are headed towards this one world nation, they say that if that were ever to really happen, if that were coming true, if the process had begun, one of the first things that we would see is the insertion of universal basic income. So how do you make that happen? How would you make it happen? Because if you just voted on it, right? If pre-March 15th, before the pandemic, if there was suddenly a vote put to Americans as to whether or not we were going to greenlight a law that would give everybody universal basic income, there would be, certainly a percentage of people who would be into it, but there would be a big percentage of people like myself who would have all kinds of concerns with the government taking control of paying for my basic living expenses, like where I live, my food, my rent, all that stuff. I would have to see so many things in writing that were guaranteed that they could not, stick their hand in my life and stick their nose in my life and have control over my life. Because once again, going back to college when I left, when somebody is now just giving you money to live, they are going to have a say in how you live. Now, again, it's not like the government is partnering with you on a business and you're bringing in people that you want to partner with and you want other people that have, strengths that counter your weaknesses and your buildings. No, this is the government's going to give you money for your basic living. I would have to know that the government could not take anything. And that if I disagreed with the government, if I disagreed with them, that they couldn't just stop the money. Because at that point, they now have influence and control, right? So before March 15th, before the pandemic, had we put it to a vote, my guess it probably wouldn't have passed. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, listen, there's going to be a time when we get there with AI and the explosion of AI technology, that in the service industry and in the automotive industry and in the computer industry, there's going to be such advancements that, such a large percentage of the population is going to lose their jobs to AI that we're going to have to switch over to a UBI, Universal Basic Income system. And I agree with all that. That's fine. We're not there today, though. We're not there today. We're getting there. It's coming soon, but we're not there, okay? So pre-March 15th, if it was just put to a vote, I bet it would fail. I bet there would be a lot of people who are like myself that are like, you know what, now listen, I'm good. If there are people in the world that can't live, like the homeless and, the disenfranchised, and they need help them, but I'm good with making my own money. I'm good with, I don't want anyone to have say in how I live my life, right? So, I guess the question becomes, well, how would you change that? If you just wanted to install universal basic income, if you just wanted to make it a part of life and take the decision away from us, and just make it a part of life. I know one way to do it. One way would be to have a pandemic and then take away people's ability to work for 3 months, give them $1,200 and starve them out until you have 40 million people that are out of work, until the homeless population is exploding, until people are terrified as to where they're going to live, until they're terrified that if the state took away their rent moratoriums that they would be homeless. And then you make universal basic income a part of an act, a part of a bill. And then Congress just votes on it. And then everybody who's terrified, they just want the money. They just want the cash. Just give me the money because I don't know where I'm going to live, because I'm on the verge of my kids not eating. I'm on the verge of not having a roof above my head. My business is collapsing. Then have the government just swoop in and more or less install a form of universal basic income. Now, this could be hidden in many ways. You could say, well, universal basic income is just a flat ongoing check throughout, year round. Well, yeah, could be, but what universal basic income is anything that basically makes it easy for Uncle Sam to pay the bills. Now, that could be in tax credits. That could be relieving college loan payments. That could be adding hazard pay. That could be boosting unemployment. That could be straight stimulus checks, yes, $1,200, $2,000. That could be grants and loans that are super easy to get that they wouldn't otherwise ever get. And you basically just mask each of these things, knowing that they're all going to add up to some amount that would carry you throughout the year. Or you could do as is being proposed, $2,000 for a guaranteed 6 months, and then every month after, where less than 60% of the country is working, which we're going to be behind that for a long time, guys. I mean, of the 40 million people that are out of work, they actually think that number is closer to 60 million. And now they say roughly 42% of those jobs are not coming back. So if everybody in America was put on a $2,000 a month plan for 6 months, and then every month after, when less than 60% of the country was working, man, we're talking about potentially 2 or 3 years that people would be receiving $2,000 a month, or $1,000 per individual. Now, once the economy rebounds with those payments in play, with whether it be just a straight stimulus monthly check or an ongoing check, or a combination of all those things, a combination of grants that are loans that are forgivable, of grants, of extended and enhanced unemployment, hazard pay, 2-3 times, the normal salary tacked on for, a year or ongoing even further, tax relief, not having to pay medical bills, not having to pay mortgages. There is a proposal to not pay rent for a year. All of these things, if all these things are in play and the economy rebounds and it's stronger than it's ever been with these elements in play, with all of these universal basic income elements in play, they're not going to take them away. They're not going to take them away because one thing the stock market does not like is dramatic change. Now, I'm not going to try to tell you guys I'm some crazy investor. I don't know shit about the stock market. I know basic things. My partner Thomas is a genius at the stock market. So I only know what I've learned through osmosis of talking to him. But one thing I do know is that the economy does not like change. It is very emotional. It does not like change. So if the economy rebounded with all of these universal basic income elements in play, okay, then that now becomes a part of our economy. Those payments going to Americans are now a part of our working economy, and you don't just shut those things off without having a dramatic effect on the economy. So once it's in play, guys. It's not going away. It's not going away. And what's scary about that is if it's voted on, which it's going to be voted on in about 2 weeks. When I say voted on, I mean by Congress and the Senate and Trump. All 3 divisions of our government, not the public. We have no say in this. Okay? If this HEROES Act is what it's called, if it is passed and if it provides universal basic income, We didn't vote on it. We'll just receive it, like it or not. Interesting how that worked, huh? There was a pandemic in play, and then now, because of the way it all went down, we could all now be receiving universal basic income without anything to assure that there's checks and balances between us and the government. Guys, please think about what I'm saying here. Like, really think about this. The HEROES Act is going to be passed, some form of it. Mitch McConnell just came out and said, our number one goal is to get money to the people and to do it fast. Now, the original CARES Act is 1,800 pages long, and it's $3 trillion. $3 trillion. And it includes things like rent-free for a year, $2,000 a month to anybody making less than $200,000 a year, guaranteed for 6 months. Breaks on, college loans. Like, you name it. Like, hazard pay, frontline pay. Like, it is just a massive amount of money that would go to the public. And if all of that is voted on and passed. Now, when I say all of that, look, the House has already said, oh, it's a crazy wish list. The Dems are just going too far. They're going too far. Well, look, that would be, again, this shit is like textbook. It'd be the perfect thing to say if you're trying to just get, universal basic income through. The Dems come out on the House side and they have this incredibly liberal spending, bill that's 1,800 pages of $3 trillion and, programs to help the public. And then, the House is, or the Senate and the Republicans go, oh, that's crazy spending. Let's really dial it in. But at the end of the day, they're going to turn in a package that is going to send an exorbitant amount of money to the people. Now, listen, I'm not saying that people don't need it. No, people need relief right now in a big way. People need relief right now in a big way. But remember, the people didn't create this problem. The government did. The government did. So is this an answer? Is this potentially an answer as to what this is all about? Because everybody's been scratching their head and going, okay, so now that we know that the coronavirus, kills anywhere between 1% to 3% of the people who get it, and the average age of the person who dies of the coronavirus is older than the natural average age of death. Let me say that again. The average age of people who die of the coronavirus is older than the average age of death. The average age of death is like 72, and like 77 is the average age of those who die of the coronavirus. So we hear about this virus. Our government just shuts down. Months go by in which people are not allowed to work, in which only $1,200 is sent out to each American. And it's not like Congress can't do basic math, guys. Let's see. No one could work for 3 months, so they would have to have, the American public would need 3 months of, dollar bills to cover 3 months worth of bills. But let's only send them $1,200. Now let's make it a really slow process where a massive percentage of the country is now fucked. Okay? Now once they're all fucked, let's drag this all the way out until July. Let's have, the House bring in a crazy liberal spending policy, and then the Senate can pare it down and say, we're not just going to go nuts here. We're going to really try to make this right for the people, and we're going to, dial it in. And then suddenly at that point, there's such a big percentage of the public that is starving that they will accept whatever bill is passed without ever having the right, the public, without ever having the right to vote on whether or not they want Uncle Sam to be controlling the basic elements of their life. But that's going down right now. And the reason this is so terrifying to those who believe in the New World Order and the One World Nation conspiracy theory is, say it's 4 years from now, okay? Say Trump wins again, it's 4 years from now, all these lines of revenue, all these universal basic income lines are established, and now the government is paying the most valuable of all your costs each month, the cost of your rent, your food, clothes, the basic needs are now being provided, not met, provided by the government. If 4 years from now, suddenly we hear that, Putin and Trump got together and they decided that at the end of Trump's term, then we're dropping borders and there's going to be, one nation, Earth. That's what it's going to be. We are mankind and we are all, brothers and sisters. And now there is one planet, Earth, and there is a leader of that. And whether it be Trump or Putin, there's going to be United Nations, and one guy is going to be the leader, one guy is going to be the vice, and now we are just the world. And if you like it and you want to go along with it, great. We'll keep paying all your bills, because now that each nation is under universal basic income, it's very easy just to switch over to one currency. If you want to keep going along with it, you'll keep getting your money. But if you don't want to go along with this, and this is what scares everybody, then they can just take the money away. They can take the money away. How many people do you think would go against it if they knew that their basic needs would no longer be provided? Suddenly tomorrow, if we did not have universal basic income like it is right now, we didn't have it, and tomorrow everyone said, hey, we're going to just, drop all our borders and we're going to just become one nation. And fuck, man, everybody and their brother would be against. You'd have to tear our Constitution up. Everybody and their brother would be against that. But the conversation changes dramatically when Uncle Sam is providing your basic needs to survive. Your basic needs to survive. Suddenly you'd have a lot of people going, well, look, as long as they just keep paying my shit and I'm okay, then okay, I'm good. Because I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be wondering where my check's going to come from. I don't want to, that's the fear. And is that crazy? Is that crazy to think that could be going on? Surely there would be some indication if that were the case, right? Because nobody's saying, or no one's calling it universal basic income right now in the HEROES Act that's coming up to vote on. But there are some things that are going on that are really bizarre. I don't know if you guys just heard, but it was just announced that 4 million Americans, and they're not saying how they came up with that number, and they're not saying why they were chosen, but 4 million Americans right now, as you listen to this, are receiving debit cards with their $1,200 stimulus check. Debit cards. Now the government said, oh, it's just a procedure that we're testing. Now hold on. The only reason to have a debit card is if you're going to keep replenishing the till. There's nothing in the law to say that past this $1,200 that everybody supposedly already got or is still waiting on, there's nothing to say any more money's coming right now. But 4 million people are receiving debit cards now for the $1,200. The only reason to do that, guys, is if you're going to replenish the till, it's a debit card. That's the only reason to do it, to make sure it works, to make sure the system works. So why are they doing that right now? Why are 4 million people, Google this, guys, Google it. 4 million people are receiving their stimulus checks in debit cards. One reason you would do it is if you were going to move to a universal basic income situation. And in the short term, you need a way to do it. Well, test it out on 4 million people. See how it works. Because here's the thing. If we're moving towards this one world government, if suddenly everybody is being paid in debit cards, get ready for universal basic income. Because that is the only reason to serve up debit cards. If you're going to keep replenishing the till month after month after month after month. But what's even more terrifying than that is that in Sweden, They've started doing this in the sense that the government has all kinds of programs for the public, all kinds of grants and assistance programs, and they have already started doing the microchip. And it's a chip that goes between your thumb and your finger, and it has all of your information on it, all of your financial information, your banking information, medical information. This is no longer a theory and something that, down the road can happen. It's happening right now. In fact, there's a part of the CARES Act that refers to the potential of a chip, of chipping Americans. And the thing is, we wouldn't just all agree to a chip right away. I think anybody that has half a brain and the government knows that Americans are not just going to, accept universal basic income with with nothing in play to basically, put checks and balances against the government. Oh, and by the way, you all have to accept, a microchip. I think that that's something that they would definitely have to build towards. But in the interim, the most important thing would be to just get us on universal basic income. And the way to do that would be debit cards. So if that happens, and suddenly we all learn that through this new HEROES Act that's coming through, every American that makes less than, $200,000 is going to get, whatever, a $15,000 yearly package, $20,000. Some say it could be as high as $38,000, as low as $6,000. Whatever it's going to be, if we suddenly all get debit cards, that's not going away, guys. That's here to stay. And if that's here to stay, then I think that's the first sign that's pretty concrete that there are powers in our governments that want a one world or a new world order, a one world nation. Now, also, for those that believe in the fake alien invasion, that theory says there is a real invasion coming, which would mean that there are extraterrestrials out there, and we know of it. We know of them. And one of the reasons that's argued that you would go to a new world order, or a one world nation, is again that we would no longer be representing the United States or Russia or Australia. We would be representing Earth. We are now Earthlings. We're not Australians. We're not Americans. We're not Russians. We're not the French. We are Earthlings. There's a lot of people that believe that's why the Space Force is, such a big deal. Russia also dominates in space. And there's a lot of people that believe that is the actual connection that no one's talking about between Trump and Putin, is that the two superpowers when it comes to space is Russia and America. Now, people falsely think that China and Japan, and India are kicking ass in the space race. Listen, they are all so far behind Russia, it's ridiculous. Man, just up until recently, whenever we needed a ride to space, you know who we got it from? The Russians. When Apollo ended, that is how we got to space. The Russians took us. And the one connection between Trump and Russia that would have to be strong in order for this new world order and the one world nation defending us and fighting against a real extraterrestrial enemy, if that were to happen, the two people that would need to be tight would be Trump and Putin. It would be Russia and America. Now, that's going, further down the road, but there's a very realistic thing here. Whether there is, a pending fake alien invasion, which there's something really weird going on with space, if you look at what's going on with the DOD and the press and the media and all that stuff, but we don't know what that is yet. But regardless, if there is a push to go to a one world nation, regardless as to what that is for or where it's going, what's going on right now is exactly what would have to happen to get universal basic income in play without us voting on it, with us just accepting it. Because Americans have been starved out, and it's been very intentional. It's been very intentional. They can do basic math on the Hill. Tell people they can't work for 3 months, and then give them $1,200. And now you know they will accept whatever the fuck comes out of Washington if it involves a check. And just like my, parents and my mother would have controlled my life if I would have accepted money from them for my basic living expenses, the government will control your life if you just accept their money for basic living expenses. Sweden's already getting the chip. Anybody want a chip in your hand that has all your information and you can be tracked, all your financial information? A chip that the government can control if your bank account says zero or $10,000, $100,000, they can just blank it anytime they want. Anybody want that to happen? It's happening in Sweden, guys. It's happening in Sweden right now. It's happening. It's not coming, it's happening. In 2 weeks, they're going to vote on whether or not Americans will start receiving the largest amount of stimulus, quote, stimulus, money ever given to each individual American. They're voting on it. We're not. They are. They say that the bill should be anywhere between, $1 to $3 trillion. Obama's bailout was $920 billion. More money than that is supposed to go into programs that come directly to Americans. And I can tell you this, if you think that Uncle Sam is going to give $1 trillion to just put cash in our pocket to make sure we're okay, without wanting something back in return in a big way, you're crazy. We are living in some crazy times, guys, and I would love to know your thoughts. Is universal basic income coming? And if it does, are you going to get chipped? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for listening once again, and I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.